November 18, 2025. A White House meeting. A weapons deal worth billions. And buried in the headlines, a 2,600-year-old prophecy just moved one step closer to reality. Trump handed Saudi Arabia the keys to the most advanced fighter jet on Earth. Most people saw politics. Prophecy scholars saw something else entirely. 3 ancient texts, 3 modern events, and they're aligning in a sequence that matches the Bible word for word. What happened in that room wasn't just diplomacy, it was stage setting. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button right now so that you won't miss what's coming next, because when Saudi Arabia makes its next move, you'll want to know what it means. The F-35 isn't just any aircraft, it's 5th-generation stealth technology, air superiority that reshapes entire regions. And Trump just promised it to Saudi Arabia, the guardian of Islam's holiest sites, a nation that refused to recognize Israel for 75 years. But here's what the headlines missed. This sale signals something far bigger than military hardware. It positions Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, a peace framework involving multiple nations and Israel. And that matters because of 3 prophecies written thousands of years ago. Daniel 9:27 describes a future leader confirming a covenant with many nations for 7 years. Ezekiel 38 names specific countries that will invade Israel, and one nation that stays neutral despite having military power. 1 Thessalonians 5 warns that when the world celebrates peace and safety, sudden destruction follows. 3 ancient texts, 3 modern alignments, and they're all pointing to the same moment. But before you can see how precise this is, you need to understand what Daniel actually said. Daniel 9:27, one verse that's been studied, debated, and analyzed for 2,500 years. And here's what it says. A future leader will confirm a covenant with many for 7 years. Midway through, he breaks it. Desolation follows. Let's break down what that actually means. First, the word confirm doesn't mean create from scratch. It means strengthen, enforce, make binding. So this leader doesn't necessarily write a brand new peace treaty. He takes something that already exists and gives it power, legitimacy, a guaranteed timeline. Second, covenant with many. Not one nation, not 2, many, multiple parties. A multilateral agreement involving numerous countries working together under a single framework. Third, for 7 years. In Daniel's prophecies, weeks mean weeks of years. 7-year periods. This covenant gets locked in for exactly 7 years. That's the timer. That's the countdown. And fourth, he shall confirm. The he is the Antichrist, the future world leader who emerges during the tribulation. This verse describes his first major act. He doesn't conquer through war initially. He conquers through peace. For 2,000 years, scholars wondered what covenant Daniel was talking about. What agreement? Which nations? When would this happen? Then, September 15, 2020 changed everything. The Abraham Accords were signed on the White House lawn. Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. A peace normalization agreement. Diplomatic relations established. Economic ties opened. Security cooperation began. But it didn't stop there. Morocco joined in December 2020. Sudan followed. Multiple Arab nations, all normalizing with Israel through one framework. A covenant with many. The Abraham Accords are exactly the kind of multilateral peace agreement Daniel described. Multiple nations, single framework, Israel at the center. But here's the key detail. No one's confirmed it for 7 years yet. No leader has stepped forward to guarantee it, enforce it, make it binding for a specific period. Right now, the Abraham Accords are the house that's been built. The structure exists. The framework is there. But no one's moved in. No one's signed the 7-year lease. The question isn't whether the house exists anymore. The question is, who walks through that door and says, I guarantee this for 7 years? And that's where Saudi Arabia becomes critical. Because without Saudi Arabia, the Abraham Accords remain small, regional, limited. But with Saudi Arabia, it transforms into something truly comprehensive, something worthy of the phrase, covenant with many. For 75 years, Arab nations refused to recognize Israel's right to exist. No trade, no embassies, no cooperation, just hostility, wars, and boycotts. The Abraham Accords shattered that pattern. UAE has 10 million people. Bahrain has 1.5 million. Morocco has 37 million. Sudan has 45 million. Combined, that's roughly 93 million people across 4 nations now officially recognizing Israel. That's significant, but it's not transformative, because there's one nation that matters more than all the others combined: Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia isn't just another Arab country, it's the birthplace of Islam. It houses Mecca and Medina, the 2 holiest sites in the Islamic world. Every Muslim on earth prays toward Mecca 5 times a day. Every able Muslim makes pilgrimage there at least once in their lifetime. Saudi Arabia has religious authority that no other nation possesses. It's also the wealthiest Arab nation, the largest oil producer, and the de facto leader of the Sunni Arab world. Here's the reality. If Saudi Arabia normalizes with Israel, most of the Muslim world can justify it too. If the Guardian of Mecca says it's acceptable to have relations with the Jewish state, other nations follow. Saudi Arabia's participation transforms the Abraham Accords from a regional agreement into a covenant with many. It brings the full weight of the Arab world into the equation. And on November 18, 2025, Trump moved that piece closer to the board. The F-35 sale isn't just about jets. It's about positioning Saudi Arabia as a partner, an ally, a nation ready to join. But Saudi Arabia's role goes deeper than Daniel's prophecy, because 2,600 years ago, Ezekiel saw something specific about this exact nation. Ezekiel 38 describes a massive invasion of Israel in the latter years, a coalition of nations led by a figure called Gog from the land of Magog. And Ezekiel doesn't speak in vague terms. He names specific nations, lists them by their ancient names. Here's what he saw: Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, ancient regions in what is now Russia and former Soviet territories. Most scholars identify this as Russia or a Russia-aligned power leading the charge. Persia. This one's easy. Ancient Persia is modern-day Iran. No debate, no ambiguity. Persia equals Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, North African nations. Some interpretations include Sudan and other African Muslim majority countries in this group. Gomer and Togarmah, likely modern Turkey, or regions in Eastern Europe and Armenia. So the coalition is clear: Russia or a Russian sphere, Iran, Turkey, North African nations, all invading Israel in the end times. Now here's what makes this stunning. That exact coalition is forming right now. Russia and Iran have been military allies since 2015. They coordinate in Syria. They share intelligence. They conduct joint military exercises. Turkey, once a NATO ally firmly in the Western camp, has shifted. It's purchasing Russian weapons systems. It's coordinating with Iran on regional issues. The relationship isn't perfect, but the alignment is undeniable. North African nations remain politically unstable, many with strong Islamist movements hostile to Israel. The pieces Ezekiel described are moving into position, but Ezekiel didn't just describe who invades. He described who doesn't. Ezekiel 38:13 mentions Sheba and Dedan. And these nations do something specific. They ask questions. They protest verbally. But they don't send armies. They don't join the invasion. They don't defend Israel militarily. They just watch and say, "Are you invading to take plunder?" So who are Sheba and Dedan? Biblical scholars have identified them based on ancient geography. Sheba was a kingdom in the southern Arabian Peninsula. The Queen of Sheba visited Solomon. Her kingdom was located in what is now Yemen and Saudi Arabia. Dedan was a region in northwestern Arabia, modern-day Saudi Arabia. Sheba and Dedan equal the Arabian Peninsula, specifically Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. And Ezekiel says these nations will protest the invasion, but not fight. They'll have the capability, they'll have the proximity, but they won't intervene. Armed but neutral, powerful but passive, watching but not acting. Now look at what's happening right now. Iran, ancient Persia, is Israel's greatest enemy, preparing for confrontation, building alliances, funding proxies. Saudi Arabia, Sheba and Dedan, is moving toward normalization with Israel. Economic ties, diplomatic discussions, security cooperation behind the scenes. Saudi Arabia and Iran are rivals. Sunni versus Shia, Arab versus Persian. Regional competition for dominance. Saudi Arabia is not allied with Iran's coalition. In fact, they're on opposite sides, exactly as Ezekiel predicted. But here's the detail that makes November 18th so significant. The F-35 is the most advanced fighter jet in the world. Fifth-generation stealth technology, unmatched air superiority, a game-changer for any nation that possesses it. Selling F-35s to Saudi Arabia does three things. First, it signals a deep U.S.-Saudi military alliance. You don't sell your most advanced weapons to enemies, only to close allies. This sale says America views Saudi Arabia as a strategic partner for decades to come. Second, it makes Saudi Arabia militarily capable. With F-35s, Saudi Arabia becomes one of the most powerful air forces in the Middle East. They'll have the technology to dominate their airspace, to project power, to defend or attack if needed. Third, and this is key, it positions them exactly where Ezekiel said they'd be. Armed but neutral. Ezekiel 38:13 says Sheba and Dedan will ask questions when the invasion happens. They'll protest. They'll express concern, but they won't send troops. They won't join the fight. They won't use their military power to defend Israel. Why? The prophecy doesn't say, but it's clear. They stay on the sidelines. And right now, that's exactly where Saudi Arabia is positioning itself. Saudi Arabia has economic interests with Israel, shared enemies in Iran, technological partnerships developing quietly, tourism potential, intelligence sharing, but full normalization? Not yet. Full military alliance? Not happening. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has set conditions. He won't join the Abraham Accords unless there's progress on a Palestinian state. He won't go all in without something to show his people, his region, the Muslim world. So Saudi Arabia remains in between, friendly but not allied, cooperating but not committed, armed but not defending. It's the perfect prophetic position, strong enough to matter, close enough to care, but distant enough to stay neutral when it counts. A militarily powerful Saudi Arabia with economic ties to Israel, but no mutual defense treaty. That's not speculation. That's not interpretation. That's Ezekiel 38:13 playing out in real time. 2 prophecies down. Daniel's covenant framework exists. Ezekiel's nations are aligning. But there's a third prophecy, and this one explains the psychology behind it all. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The Apostle Paul wrote a warning about the day of the Lord, the tribulation period, the final years before Christ returns. And he said something chilling. When people say peace and safety, sudden destruction comes upon them, like a thief in the night, like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Let's break that down. When they shall say, not when there is peace and safety. When they say it, when they proclaim it, when they celebrate it. The words matter. The rhetoric matters. The narrative being pushed by world leaders and media matters. And right now, those exact words are everywhere. The Abraham Accords are called a historic peace agreement, regional stability, security cooperation, safety through normalization. Leaders stand at podiums and use those precise terms: peace, safety, security, stability. But Paul says that's when sudden destruction falls. Not eventually, not after a long build-up, suddenly, while the celebrations are still happening, while the ink on the treaties is still wet, while world leaders are congratulating themselves on solving ancient conflicts. He compares it to labor pains. And if you know anything about childbirth, you know 3 things about labor pains. They're inevitable. Once they start, the baby is coming. No stopping it. No going back. They intensify. They start mild, then get stronger, faster, more frequent. Each wave worse than the last. They end in delivery. The pain leads somewhere. It produces something. In this case, judgment. Paul's warning isn't about fear. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing the pattern. When the world celebrates peace, when leaders promise safety, when everyone lets their guard down, that's the moment of greatest danger. And here's the timeline Paul connects it to. The day of the Lord, the tribulation, the same 7-year period Daniel described, the same invasion Ezekiel prophesied. 3 prophecies, 1 timeline, 1 sequence of events. A leader confirms a peace covenant for 7 years. Nations align into coalitions. The world celebrates peace and safety. Then, sudden destruction. Daniel gave the framework. Ezekiel gave the nations. Paul gave the warning about the deception. And right now, November 2025, the framework exists. The nations are positioning, and the peace rhetoric is louder than ever. The pieces aren't just moving, they're locked in place. 3 prophecies written thousands of years apart. Daniel saw a covenant with many nations for 7 years. Ezekiel saw armies gathering, and one nation staying armed but neutral. Paul saw the world celebrating peace right before destruction. The Abraham Accords exist. Saudi Arabia is being positioned. Iran's coalition is forming, and the peace rhetoric matches Paul's warning word for word. We're not in the tribulation, not yet, but the stage is set. The actors are in position, and when Saudi Arabia signs, when a leader confirms that covenant for 7 years,